Good morning everyone, welcome to Our Small Footprint. My name is Nyssa, and if you're new here, we are a family of 8 who live off-grid in Australia. Today's video is something I only did yesterday. I know I've got a backlog of videos to go, but I am a Thermomix consultant for anyone who hasn't been around. So I have a Thermomix and I am able to assist people with buying one. If they want, they can buy it through me and I earn a commission. Or if they buy anything through the Thermomix online shop, if they put my name in the consultant little box, then I earn a commission from that as well. So thank you to everyone who has done that so far, and I have thoroughly enjoyed the discussions and stuff with the people who have purchased a Thermomix as well through me, so that we could, you know, figure out what they're doing and all the rest of it. So that has been wonderful. So because I'm a Thermomix consultant, they have a new tool come out called the Cutter, which goes along with the Thermomix, and it was only released in a small amount this month, and I managed to earn one by selling a certain amount. I can't even remember what I did to qualify for it, but I managed to earn one 3 in 1 month or something, I think. Anyway, I earned my Cutter and it arrived yesterday. Well, it hit the post office on like Monday, but we didn't get a chance to get it, and so I was using it yesterday. And at the moment you can only get them as host rewards, which isn't particularly useful for me because I don't hold many demos for people. They should be available to the general public probably in, I think maybe I got told April might have been, so not for a while yet. But if you host a demo, you can earn a discounted one, access to buying a discounted one, or if you host a demo and somebody buys one at your demo, then you can earn it for free. So if anyone wants some information, feel free to reach out. But otherwise they'll be available to the general public, I think, in April through the Thermomix shop. We'll have to wait and see, and I'll let you know. But I managed to earn one early, and that's, you know, the consultants get to have it so that they can demo it for people and all that sort of thing, and it's just pretty exciting. So it is basically a food processing attachment, a grater and a slicer that goes with the Thermomix. Now I use my KitchenAid drum grater a lot because it's convenient, but it is also inconvenient because it's up quite high, so I tend to make a mess because all the liquids from everything. You've got a bowl underneath. It's not the easiest thing to clean, and I regularly just leave my pasta attachment attached to my KitchenAid because that's what I use the most, and because I leave it attached so often, it's kind of hard to get off. So swapping them over isn't always the easiest thing in the world. It's not the nicest to clean either. Not that I do dishes, but, you know, just for thinking of the kids and all that sort of. So anyway, I normally use my drum grater, and so I was really excited to give the Thermomix Cutter a go. So I did some cooking yesterday. I only used the grating portion of it so far. So it has one side of the disc is grating and one side of the disc is slicing. To make my zucchini slice that I would normally be making in abundance at the moment, because normally we'd have zucchinis coming out of our ears, but again, as with the way the gardens are going, that's not happening. So I actually had to buy zucchini to make zucchini slice, which isn't something I would normally do. So, but I did because I wanted to make it. I wanted to use the Cutter in a way that I would normally use it. Like, this is a dish that I make all the time, normally. So I thought I'd bring you along and show you how it works and give you the recipe for my zucchini slice that I make as well. So here we go. Now you'll have to excuse the angle that that this is on. It's on a slightly different angle to how I would normally shoot the video, because I wanted to show the actual cutter mechanism and stuff, and I didn't realize that Darryl was doing washing in the background, so he pops in and out of scene quite a lot and moves around a bit, which is a little bit distracting. But I also didn't realize how dusty that wall is behind him until I pulled the video up. And of course I'm not going to go and reshoot the video of making the zucchini slice when I've already made it, just to make it look better, because we all know that I don't really have time for that. So excuse the wall in the background and Darryl popping in and out, and we'll just have to deal with it like a lot of other things in my videos. So I wanted to do the zucchini slice because it's something that I would normally make. As I said, at this time of the year there would normally be massive amounts of zucchini coming out of the garden, and I would be making zucchini slice every second day because everyone loves it. It's a really simple dish. We have lots of eggs because it's that time of the year as well, so it would be something I would make on a regular basis. So that's what I wanted to make, because I wanted to be making something that I would normally make, so that I'd have this sort of like a testing point to use it for something that I make all the time in other ways. So I wanted to use the different grating styles. So with the Thermomix cutter, it has the bowl that goes into your bowl and then it has the grating disc. And the grating disc has two sides, a light grey and a dark grey. And the one side is slicing and one side is grating. And then if you turn your Thermomix onto reverse, you get a thin. And if you turn it into forward, you get a thick. So you have 4 different styles with the single disc. I wanted to try out the thin and the thick cutting of the vegetables because I wanted to see what it looked like and how it worked and which one is my preference and things like that. So I did that for the zucchini and the carrot. I did some of both. I only did the thin on the sweet potato because sweet potato is one of the veggies in something like this that takes a little bit longer to cook, so it's probably better that it's a little bit thinner because in comparison to carrot and zucchini, it takes that little bit longer to cook. So I liked the idea of that. The thicker shreds are a little bit shorter than what comes out of the drum grater. They're a little bit, obviously with the movement of the grater, they end up slightly shorter shreds than longer, but it's still a shred, which is what I like. So previously, if you were going to make something like a zucchini slice with the Thermomix, you'd have to use the blades in the bowl, and you end up with a minced texture rather than a shredded texture. It was never my cup of tea, which is why I had the drum grater as an addendum to the Thermomix, because I liked it to be shredded and I wasn't box grating it because it's just, my hands don't cope and there's wastage and stuff. So the drum grater for the KitchenAid worked perfectly for that. The thicker shreds are definitely slightly shorter texture-wise than out of a drum grater. Obviously that's to do with the movement and the amount of distance between the two sides of the disc and things like that, but they're perfectly long enough. They're still shreds. It's still a shredded rather than minced texture, which is perfect. So the thicker shreds are the thinner shreds are longer. Again, obviously the way that it's lined up on the discs, and the thicker ones are slightly shorter, but they're still definitely a shred. They're still definitely a grate rather than a mince, which is what we were going for. So it's also really quick. So in all the time it took me to grate all the different vegetables, I'd turn the dial on, so I'd turn it on reverse or forward depending on whether I wanted thick or thin, and on speed 4 is what you grate on, and I didn't reset the timer at any point. So to grate those 2 zucchinis, I think it was 4 carrots and the sweet potato, it was 45 seconds of total use time on the Thermomix to do that. So it was really, really quick. There is next to no pressure required on the downward movement of it. It feeds itself, which is really nice. And I compare it there to like when I'm mincing in the KitchenAid, you have to really put a lot of pressure down on that mincer on the KitchenAid, whereas when you're mincing in the Louvel mincer, it feeds itself. You don't have to put any pressure. Similar sort of a contrast here. Grating in the drum grater, you have to put a fair bit of downward force on those vegetables, and because of the height of the KitchenAid attachment, it's quite awkward. You have to lift your shoulder up to do it, whereas the Thermomix is at a better height and you don't have to put much pressure on it. You just use the little pusher and put some constant light pressure on it and it just feeds itself through. So again, it's reverse for thin and forward for thick at speed 4, and it took 45 seconds for all of that. So I'm pretty impressed. I'm going to play with it. It has a slicing attachment, so the next thing I'm going to play with is potato bake, because I think that would be really good for potato bake, to be able to slice the potatoes. I'm going to have to try the thick and the thin. I'm not sure which one I will prefer. Probably the thick one, because I think the thin one will be too small. It'll be too fiddly to pull it apart to sort of like lay it out in the tray. So I want to be able to slice up the potatoes to try for potato bake, and I can imagine that slicing up potatoes and sweet potatoes together would be really nice, and that's something that the drum grater on the KitchenAid doesn't do very well. It does have a slicing drum, and I've never really found it very good. The hole that you're feeding things through is too small too, so you're getting very small slices. The feeding chute on the Thermomix is a little bit larger. Still have to probably cut the potatoes in half to fit it through, but we'll test that out, and that sort of thing. But I'm very much looking forward to trying potato bake as the next thing. So when I do that, I will shoot it for you. I do a really nice French onion dairy-free potato bake that the kids really like, and I reckon if you could alternate sweet potato and potato, it'd look really pretty too. So I have all the shredded vegetables that I was going to use, and that's perfect. And then I had leftover ham from Christmas. So I had, when we had a big ham on the bone, because we ended up with 3 hams all up over that span of Christmas, because we got one with the hamper, we bought one early on and then one late. I think we got a bit hammed out. So we had some excess ham left on the bone. We cut it all off the bone, and then we diced it all up and stuck it in bags in the freezer so that we could use it at a later date. It was chopped into chunks. Darryl had chopped it for me, but not particularly small chunks. So what I wanted to do was mince it up further, because you want to distribute it through the zucchini slice as well as possible. So if I was using bacon or chicken or anything like that, I'd be dicing it nice and small, because I want it distributed evenly through the whole slice so that you get the flavour in all of it, but also so that it cooks better. So because I just use the cutter attachment, it doesn't dirty the actual KitchenAid bowl. It is in that cutter bowl. So I could just remove the cutter bowl and then place the ham straight into the bowl underneath with the blades. And all I did was run it at speed 9 for about 15 seconds to mince it up into some smaller pieces. It was pretty hard frozen, and Darryl had frozen it in some chunks. So there were still some chunks when I was done, but it was very passable. So I just put it in there sort of 10-15 seconds, speed 9, got it sort of shredded up so that it would distribute better, and that was that. So with my zucchini slice, I tend to do it ratio based. I can't give you a list of ingredients as such. What I do is I do ratios and weights. So I do around about 1,700 grams of my vegetables and meat. So today we did the zucchini, the carrot, sweet potato, and I added a tin of corn that I had drained, and the ham, and so all of that added up to about the 1,700-ish grams of filling. You can fluctuate that up and down a little bit. 16 to 18 I probably would be about the most that I would fluctuate it, to be honest, but 1,700 worked really well, so I tend to aim for that. But I'm not going to, like, I sliced all those vegetables up, and with the corn, it might have been 1740 or something, and I wasn't going to be pulling stuff out of the bowl to bring it back down to the 1,700 either. So, you know, it's around about that. To that, we add 500 grams of flour and 12 eggs. Now, I like to mix the flour through the shredded veggies and meat first, because like when you're putting blueberries or something in a muffin mix, you coat them in flour first and it stops it from sinking, and it improves the texture. And then especially with those really thin shreds, they were sticking together quite a bit, so by covering everything with flour, it was separating it all. I like to use my hands. I know that I get a bit of flack on here sometimes when I do cook with my hands, but I find it the easiest method to make sure that it's done well. So I could use a wooden spoon, I could use a spatula, but there would still be lumps in there, and I'd still be using my hands to break them up in the end. That's what it comes down to. So I prefer to just use my hands and break everything up as we're going. Now, I and my family are the only ones eating this food, so there's no need for gloves. I have a sink in my kitchen there that I walk off and wash my hands at constantly, and I have to edit my videos an awful lot to get those, 10-second increments out all the time. I used some self-raising flour because I had some that I'm trying to get rid of, but you can use plain flour with bicarb and baking powder. So it's the normal thing. It's per cup of flour, you would normally use a teaspoon of baking powder and half a teaspoon of baking soda or bicarb soda, and each cup is around about 150 grams. So you're looking at around about 3 teaspoons of baking powder and a teaspoon and a half of baking soda should do you about the same as using self-raising flour for that amount of flour. Up to you whether you want to use self-raising flour or do that mix. I don't buy self-raising flour anymore because I just mix my own, but I did buy some a while back and it's been sitting in a bucket, so I'm trying to get it used. So once I've covered everything in the flour and made it all separated, then I add the eggs and a bit of salt. I add 12 eggs for this amount. You could add more flavoring here. You could add garlic powder, onion powder, smoked paprika, pepper, actual onions as part of those veggies if you wanted to. My kids aren't a huge fan of crunchy onions, and I decided not to add any flavors to this, mostly because I didn't have any ground up, to be honest. Because I buy slivered dehydrated onions and chunks of garlic because I like to have the chunks for certain things, but it means I have to grind them to a powder when I'm going to use them. And if you grind them to a powder and store them, they go hard because of the moisture. So I tend to grind them as I use them, and to be honest, I just couldn't be bothered. So I didn't add any extra flavour, but that was good quality ham off the bone from Costco, so it would have added a lot of flavour to this anyway. So all I did was add just a touch of salt with the 12 eggs and then mixed it all through. I tend to use 2 of my cast iron baking pans, and I believe these are around about the equivalent of a 9 by 13. I've never measured them, but I believe that that's what they're sort of the equivalent of. And I use the Classica enamel cast iron pans, which I really like. And I normally have a link for in the description as well, an Amazon affiliate link. So if you're interested in them, you can have a look there. I evenly put it between the 2 containers, but I don't take too much effort. You can weigh it and get them really even, but you just want to eyeball it. It's not really going to make that much difference. I do bake it for about the 40 minutes at about the 180 to 200. But anyone who's been here before knows, if there's anyone new, I use a hooded barbecue as my oven, and it fluctuates quite a lot. It depends on the ambient temperature as well as as everything else, because it doesn't have a thermostat. So you have to adjust the burners depending on what the ambient temperature is, as well as what you're putting in it. So cast iron holds heat better than steel and aluminium, so it gets hotter inside with cast iron. There's a lot of different variables there to cooking with a barbecue. So for me, it was about 40 minutes at about 180 to 200 in cast iron. It is going to vary for a standard oven, and I can't help with that because I've got no way of testing it. You want to have it to have some colour on top, a little bit of browning on top, and the centre sort of domes slightly, a bit like a cake, and when you push on that dome gently, it bounces back. It's very similar to a cake. It's got that leavening agent in there, and it's got all those eggs and things like that. So it's going to dome slightly in the middle, brown slightly on top, and when you push on it, it's going to bounce back slightly. I'm not sure how a skewer would work on it. It's a vegetable. A skewer should come out clean, I would imagine, but I didn't try that. But that's how I normally judge, is the colour, the bounce back, and the doming. I cut each slab into 12 because that way the kids get 2 pieces each. And Darryl and I eat it regularly. I didn't bake this lot for us. I baked this lot for the kids. So I generally cut it into 12. The kids have 2 pieces per slab. They'll eat it hot when I first make it, so it was lunch for that day, and then they'll eat it cold for breakfast or lunch the next day or whatever they want. They just know that they get that amount out of each slab of it, I suppose, so that they all get the same amount. They really enjoy it. It's one of their favourite things to eat. Like anything, if I made it too often, they would get a bit over it, but especially at the moment, this is the first time I made it this season because no garden, no zucchinis, and they're not exactly cheap to buy. So first time I've made it this season, and they hoovered it. It was all gone. They ate their 2 pieces hot, and then this morning, because it's now the next day at lunchtime-ish, this morning they ate the other 2 pieces for breakfast cold because we're out of cereal, because it's that part of the month too. So yes, it's one of our favourite. The cutter worked wonderfully. There is a little bit of a learning curve, the backwards and the forwards, and they've got a little, remembering which side's which. It does have a label on it to a degree. You can see the ridging on each side, but you just have to think about it when you do it. I like that it was grated into a separate bowl, so I didn't have to worry about it grating into the bowl with the blades on it and then having to figure that out and that sort of thing. Liked that it was minimal pressure. The thin and the thick is great. So I'm going to be using it for a whole bunch of different things over the next weeks. I'm going to try a potato bake on it. I'd really like to try shredding up like cabbage and stuff for spring rolls and things like that. I don't have any of those veggies at the moment, so it'll be probably something that I'll do post the next grocery trip, or depending on the hamper is due this weekend, so depending on what comes in the food hamper this weekend, as to what I might get a chance to try it on. I did think it might work really nicely for my caramelized onion jam. I badly need to do another batch of that. Slicing the onions is always such a chore though, but if I could slice them in the cutter, then it might take that whole process up a level and make it a whole lot quicker. So we're going to give that a go. So I hope you enjoyed seeing the zucchini slice recipe, because that's a great one to use and it's so versatile, so easy to use. But anyone who was interested in the cutter got to see the cutter in action as well. I did try to start shooting while talking to the camera and showing like it going together and stuff. It wasn't going to work. It just doesn't work in my house. Not unless I sent all the children somewhere else to be able to do it. So the voiceover is what you got, and hopefully that was clear enough. Any questions, feel free to ask. And if anyone wants some information about getting the Thermomix or the cutter, then you feel free to ask as well. But I hope everyone got something from that, and I will see you on the next video. Thanks, guys.